Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. It keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Music Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Rory O'Toole. Hope you guys are well. Hope you guys are enjoying, I guess, our last days of summer as we approach the beginning of fall. I don't know when autumn begins, actually. I think it's next week sometime, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to have to check my calendar, but man, summer went by fast, and all the music that's been released has made it go by even faster because I've had to just plow through so much music, keep up with everything that's going on in the music world, which is constantly evolving and spinning just like this planet. But you know what? It's fun. I enjoy it. I am a music nerd just like the rest of you guys. So for the show today, we are going to be focusing on a segment I call the Roundup, which is basically a summation of the biggest news, the biggest tracks, and the biggest trends of the week. After that, we're going to be moving into a review and analysis. Yeah, that's how you say it. Can't speak right now. Of Zeros from Declan, McKenna, and Youngboy Never Broke Again's album Top. Before moving into Skip or Save, the topic comes up. I say, do I want to skip that or do I want to save that? Kind of like when you're listening to a song. Do you skip or do you save? Before finally finishing off with another edition of Classic Album of the Week. This time we're discussing the 50th anniversary of Paranoid from Black Sabbath. It's going to be a lot today. Can't wait to get into it all. So, start things off. Just to give you a sense of what happened since our last episode. The Flaming Lips are back with a follow-up to their album from last year, King's Mouth. It features 2 songs with Casey Musgraves, which I was not expecting. Those songs, Flowers of Neptune 6 and God and the Policeman. And it also features My Religion Is You, which I think had a music video that was released in June. So, looking forward to listening to that. I have not had a chance to give it a listen yet, but we'll be doing that as soon as possible. The Gallagher brothers have major beef yet again. Surprise, surprise. Noel Gallagher, Liam Gallagher, of course, the 2 founding members of the 90s rock supergroup Oasis. Obviously, the band broke up because the brothers themselves had a falling out. Now, Noel Gallagher was in the news cycle this past week for saying that he refuses to wear a mask. He complained that it's a violation of his liberty. He said, quote, "It's not a law. There's too many effing liberties being taken away from us now. I choose not to wear one. If I get the virus, it's on me. It's not on anyone else. It's a piss take. There's no need for it. They're pointless." And he referred to the radio host who was interviewing him, who was in favor of mask wearing as a cowardly germaphobe. Now, Liam Gallagher, never missing a chance to clap back at his bro, sent a selfie of himself wearing a mask and ridiculing Noel. Called Noel a bum, amongst other words I cannot repeat on the podcast, but think of your best Mancurian insults, and that is sort of in the wheelhouse of where Liam took this. Now, just to make things clear, various studies have found mask wearing to be effective in reducing the risk of catching COVID-19, including ones by Duke University and Oxford University. Mask up, y'all. Don't be like Noel Gallagher. Maybe he would have done it if John Lennon was wearing a mask. We know how much he loves to rip off John Lennon, so someone tell him John Lennon was in favor of masks and maybe he'll change his mind. Conway the Machine from the record label, the supergroup Griselda Records. They are a machine. They produce and release so much damn music, giving you your favorite Renaissance movement of boom bap, cocaine, street tail era, hardcore hip hop, real hip hop. Conway the Machine from the Buffalo Group. He's actually trying to expand his sound on this one. Of course, he has contributions from the likely cast of characters like West Side Gun, Benny the Butcher. But we also get some Alchemist. We get some Hit Boy. And we got a quote where he said, "I wanted to show growth and how much I've grown, not only as an artist, but as a man." He wants to show he's not a one-trick pony. That's another album I've not had a chance to listen to yet, but, I mean, I love the whole Griselda scene, that whole offshoot of nostalgia hip-hop right now. It's really well done, enjoyable listen. I'm sure this project's good. It's getting good reviews so far. We also had the first track from Spillage Village, the collaboration between JID and Earth Gang, the Atlanta-based supergroup. Also includes Black. They've been, making a lot of music separately as solo acts over the past 4 years. But we've heard rumors of this on the horizon, this massive collaboration, and with Baptized, we finally get to see it and hear it, and I did listen to it. Great song, really enjoying it. It is basically a promotion for their album that is coming out September 25th called Spilligion. This album is finally starting to feel real. It's happening. The message board memes, the internet rumors are finally true. That's pretty cool. And just one of the many albums that are going to be released September 25th, which we will be getting into shortly. Kanye West went on another Twitter rant. Surprise, surprise. Now he is tweeting about wanting to own the masters to all, not only his records, but to get it so that all musicians, or at least the high-level musicians, own their masters, own the publications of their song, that they're not being, on the losing end of percentages and streams and the money being made on this thing, which, maybe is a valuable conversation that we need to have, but I'm not sure if Kanye in his current state is the man that we need, the hero that we want. He did tweet that he loves Bono, he loves Paul McCartney, he loves Drake, he loves Kendrick, he even loves Taylor Swift. He says all the musicians will be free. He has called himself the new Moses and called the music industry a modern-day slave ship. He says he won't release any new music until he's released from his current contract. And he also compared himself to Nikola Tesla. He said if Nikola Tesla had Twitter, the world would run off AC. Edison killed Tesla's image to control the power. Literally, Tesla and I only mean well for the world. And, yeah, that's just another chapter in the Kanye crazy machine. It's pretty sad to see. He is bringing up some valuable points about artists owning their masters, but like I said, Kanye is not the man you want leading the charge on this. So, by the time this episode is released, who knows what else Kanye would have tweeted. I'm looking right now, and he did tweet a photo of himself urinating on his Grammy Award, so seems to only be escalating from here. That's a statement, if I've ever seen one. So if I missed something, if this is all blown up in my face because Kanye did something even crazier, you have my apologies. Dua Lipa has a Katitranda remix. Check that out. That's a really good groove that came out this week. Turns out Eminem almost got killed in a home invasion. On April 5th, he discovered a man standing behind him in his house. The rapper initially thought it was his nephew, but it turned out to be a stranger, later identified as Matthew David Hughes. When Eminem asked him why he was there, Hughes responded he was there to kill him. Somehow, Eminem convinced this man not to kill him, escorted him through his entire house, and ended it peacefully. Of course, he's in custody now, Mr. Hughes. This is a real-life Stan moment for Eminem. Obviously, he wrote the iconic track Stan that is about a crazy fan murdering his wife and daughter, driven by his obsession with Eminem. So that's pretty weird. That's some real life imitating fiction. That's quite scary. Glad Eminem's still here. 6ix9ine looks like his popularity might be waning a little bit, and I'm sure that makes everybody happy. From the post-snitch saga, don't need to go into it all now. Let's just say 6ix9ine was facing up to 40 years in jail for his ties to a Bloods gang affiliate in New York. He decided to rat out all his associates. That got him a plea deal, and now he's released free because of the coronavirus pandemic. He's releasing a new album. It's underperforming. It landed at number 4, which, is good for most people, but under expectations for what we're expecting from 6ix9ine, who was pretty easily getting the number 1 spots before this. And it begs the question, has he lost his ability to shock, to excite? Is the shine wearing off? Seems like he's basically blackballed himself by making enemies of everyone in the music industry. Never mind that his music sucks, so what's the staying power there? It might be, I feel like we're on the downslope of 6ix9ine popularity, and to me that is one piece of good news from 2020. Cardi B filed for divorce from Offset. Completely unshocking news. They already had a break 3 months into their marriage, and rappers notoriously unfaithful. That is the story here, and that is why Cardi is divorcing him from all the rumors online. Looks like she's going to have custody of their 2-year-old daughter, Culture. And it didn't sound like there was a prenup because Cardi is asking for an equitable division of all marital assets. This will be interesting. Offset, breakup album coming. Cardi B, breakup album coming. Was WAP a breakup song? at the podcast. Let's have a conversation about it. Madonna is co-writing her own biopic. That is the most Madonna news I have heard. So yeah, we're going to have another movie about rock stars and pop stars from bygone eras. Now we're moving on to the 80s. We've done Queen. We've done Elton John. We've done many others. Looks like Universal is getting the rights to this Madonna biopic. Just continuing the trend. That makes money at the box office. People like their musician biopics. And as promised, we have a ton of albums to look forward to September 25th. I'm going to have a lot to listen to, but just to get you guys excited, here's the list so far. Tim Heidecker, the comedian, he's releasing an album September 25th featuring Wise Blood, the Lemon Twigs, Jonathan Rado. It's going to be sort of laid back 70s rock sound. That'll be a fun listen. Sylvan Esso, electronic pop duo. They had a Grammy nomination for their sophomore album, What Now? They're going to release their third September 25th. Sufjan Stevens, The Ascension. Anyone you know who wears plaid is super stoked for this album that is coming out September 25th. Roisin Murphy, the Roisin Machine, the Irish dance music legend, releasing her first solo record in 4 years, September 25th. It's going to be a joint album with another iconic producer, DJ Parrott from Sheffield in the UK. Public Enemy is going to have an album September 25th. It's going to be on Def Jam, which hasn't happened in 20 years, and that's going to have a ton of great features. Idols, it's going to be the third album from the post-punk English rock band who refuse to call themselves so. In any event, they play hard-charging rock. It's basically post-punk. And it's coming out September 25th. That's going to be a big deal. Deftones going to have their first new album since 2016, released on the 25th. And 2 Chainz, So Help Me God. It's going to be the follow-up to his 2019 album, which I really enjoyed. Rapper Go to the League. He already released a single called Moneymaker. That's coming out September 25th. And that is your music roundup. After the break, we're going to get into some album reviews.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Welcome back to the show. Just got through our music roundup. Now we're going to be exploring Zeros from Declan McKenna to start with. The 21-year-old British songwriter. He was once hailed as a voice of a generation, teen prodigy. His song Brazil was a massive, massive hit. I think it was featured on the FIFA soundtrack, which is just, that's how you get superstardom right there. End up on a FIFA soundtrack. Who knows where your career is going to go. And Zeros, it's a concept album. It's very Bowie-like. It's even got some Beatles qualities to it. It's sort of Tommy in a way, in the way that it's a concept album with these sort of spacey, existential sort of storylines written throughout. And I'm actually not the biggest fan of Tommy nor concept albums, but I actually really enjoyed this project. It's Bowie-like, but it's not an imitation that's offensive or over the top. You know, sometimes these albums where they're clearly borrowing from someone can kind of grate because it's just too on the nose. They're, in some cases, literally stealing the way they enunciate, stealing the song structure, and just flat out ripping off someone who's more talented than they were or more iconic. But that's not what McKenna does here. He takes the best of, you know, David Bowie, of Sgt. Pepper's, but he's not blatantly ripping it off. He's still just borrowing from it, but giving you the Declan McKenna version that is original, fresh, definitely touches on the current day, touches on his own life. Very, very well done. He's only 21, which is crazy because he's been around for a while now, but that's because he really came on the scene with that song Brazil. I think he was like 15 years old. So the guy is definitely a wonder kid. And with this, with Zeros, he wanted to explore a ton of existential questions and sort of the things that nag at you when you're in your early 20s, which is sort of existentialism, but also the confusion of everyday life and what's my purpose, what is the best direction I should take. So it's both grounded and super out there, which I really enjoyed that contrast because he's talking about climate change, but he's also talking about, you know, what am I making the right decisions in life? Am I going down the right path? So it's like a great conversation you have where you can touch on the most heady topics and then bring it back to your own life, something relatable. And that is what he manages to do here. So overall, the album is sort of about survivors spiraling through space in this sort of dystopian parallel universe. It comes across sort of, I think this is what The Guardian wrote, like an episode of Black Mirror. And that is sort of the tone of it at some points. It does have heavy Black Mirror vibes. And yeah, it sort of uses that setting to search for the meaning of all the big questions and all the small questions. And like I said, it spans everything from Sgt. Pepper to Lou Reed to David Bowie to everything in between. On songs like Sagittarius A, McKenna's singing about, you know, a biblical flood, sort of mocking trust fund kids. He has lyrics that go, "So Noah, you best start building, you better have 10,000 children." On You Better Believe, which is the opening track, which has about 3 exclamation points, which is definitely McKenna's own making, details an asteroid hurtling down towards the planet, about to wipe everything out, leaving just enough time to take some last consolation in the empty embrace of consumption. He has a lyric, "I'm off to buy a bag of Quavers and Nike trainers. Comfort you can feel." And Twice Your Size, he sort of dips his toe into country, but still in that intergalactic zone. He's painting pictures of the sun melting. He warns that regardless of what you believe in, the earth will change, so we must grab our pets and head off out of range. On Rapture, he mixes talk of one of Britain's biggest villains with some Daft Punk vibes. Has a cyborg voice droning beneath this sort of disco sounding guitar where he name checks Miss Thatcher, whose cruel heart navigates the world we live in. Margaret Thatcher slander. Is there anything... When you have Margaret Thatcher slander in British rock and roll, that is just... It's like peanut butter and jelly. It just rolls off the tongue and makes for some great music. I thought the best song on this was How to Be an Astronaut. Just this piano ballad mixed in with just great rock and roll guitars. Just great riffs, great solos. Really rides and borders the expansive piano and lyrics. Fantastic song. And I really enjoyed this record. If you like David Bowie, if you like late Beatles era, if you like Lou Reed, check this out. That's sort of the vibe he's going for here. It's still Declan McKenna's own voice, though. It's a very singer-songwriter, indie folk kind of area he's in, though I wouldn't say that's a perfect description, but he's a very interesting talent. He's definitely just scratching the surface of what he's going to become and what he wants to sound like. And yeah, it's a very enjoyable, very ambitious, but still relatable. Youngboy Never Broke Again, the biggest rapper on YouTube, released his album Top. And this time, you know, it's more the same, to be honest, from Youngboy Never Broke Again, who was once known as NBA Youngboy, changed his name. He has been releasing a ton of music. Now, some of that has to do with the fact that he wants to get off his current record label deal. Apparently, he has some beef with Atlantic Records, and just part of the deal is he has to release a certain amount of music. So he's trying to get all that music out of the way so he can be a free agent as soon as possible. But it also speaks to sort of his creative process, which is pretty formulaic, touches on the same narratives, and kind of revolves around the same beats, same flows. So he's really just clocking in, clocking out here. That being said, his fan base is rabid, and I think he does touch on sort of the formula that can send you into superstardom in the hip-hop world, which is sort of mixing performative confessional lyrics with street tales, party records, and sort of familiar hip-hop narrative structures about, you know, paranoia, I can't trust anyone, now that I'm rich, now that I'm successful, all these people are coming for me, that sort of thing. Or, you know, the streets are going to come back and haunt me, karma is on its way, or I miss my old when things were simple before I was famous. So these are sort of the things he's talking. He's not really reinventing the wheel here, but his most powerful and most effective tool is his voice, which is just full of anguish, but also bravado. And finding that combo, I mean, this is sort of what Drake goes for, where he can have these records where he's full of bravado and swag, but then he can also have his Marvin's Room moments where he's super confessional, vulnerable, sometimes even trying to make a breakup R&B record or pop record. So that is Youngboy Never Broke Again, but where Drake has this shine to him and this squeaky clean, calculating sort of aura around him, Youngboy Never Broke Again is fatally flawed, and that is sort of part of his brand, is that he's kind of this guy who's always making mistakes, always find himself at the wrong place at the wrong time. A tragic character, which makes him all the more compelling. On this record, we get contributions from legends like Lil Wayne and Snoop Dogg, which kind of speaks to his relevance. You know, even these guys, Lil Wayne, Snoop Dogg, they see how big this kid is getting. He's already massive, and if he continues on this pace, he might be the biggest thing in hip-hop in a few years. And he's a Baton Rouge native. Like I said, he dominates YouTube. I think has the most records for like streams of, or going number one on trending on YouTube. It's really ridiculous. He's had two chart dominating mixtapes as well. And like I said, it's sort of a mix between emotional honesty and typical tough talk. That's a good formula in hip hop, and that tends to work. But you know, here doesn't work as well, and that may have to do with the fact that the guy has released 16 mixtapes and 2 albums since 2015. I mean, that is a lot of material. A lot of material. And so I feel like he's sort of running out of things to talk about here. Like I said, sort of entrenched in the street life tales, but he's holding on to visions of more positive ways of life. But there's always that threat of death or jail just around the corner. He attempts to vocalize all these complexities, but, you know, it doesn't really work to that much effect. I don't think even his fan base is going to remember this as some great project. And honestly, his biggest flaws is just not having much new to say right now. Even with all the success, he still comes across as someone who's just fresh out of Baton Rouge and telling that life. And that's compelling narrative, and that's really interesting to listen to. But when you've released 18 projects that all talk about the same thing, it's sort of wearing off. The shine is not there as much anymore. So you just got to find something new to say. He's only 20 years old. So as he ages and gets more life experiences, I think he'll have more material to touch on. But who knows? He could have already hit his peak super, super early. And he's sort of a one-trick pony. Hard to say right now, but, you know, he's not the most dynamic rapper, but he does speak to a huge contingent, especially young hip-hop fans. He's absolutely massive, and he is a harbinger of where hip-hop is going. So, superstar or not, this album, sort of a disappointment, but really, he's not trying his best here anyway, so I'm not going to judge it like he gave it his best shot. Clearly, this was half-assed to one degree or another, but if you like emotional anguish coupled with street tales, this is your project. Anyways, that is it for the album reviews. After the break, we will be getting into Skip or Save. Stick around for that.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be, visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the show. Just got through my reviews, my discussion of Declan McKenna's Zeros and Youngboy Never Broke Again's new album. Now we're moving into Skip or Save. So I explained this at the top of the show just to remind you guys. This is where I see a topic, pick a topic, and decide, do I want to skip this? Do I agree with this? Do I save it? You know, when you're listening to music, if you like something, you save it. If you don't like something, you skip it. We're going to get into that right now. So first one, lo-fi hip-hop beats to study and chill to. Do I skip or save? I save. I am a big fan of the whole YouTube sub-genre. It might even be a micro-genre. Lo-fi hip-hop beats to study and chill to. If you're not familiar, this is one of the biggest, most popular little communities, little pockets on YouTube. Mainly popular with college students up at 3 a.m. writing papers, as I used to be, and with just insomniacs who can't sleep, or people in the 18 to 34 range who are just feeling nostalgic and a bit melancholy. And this sort of captures that whole vibe. Just to give you a sense of what it is, it's basically an infinite loop of these lo-fi beats, these chill hop beats. And on screen, usually, not all the videos, but the most famous one has a tired anime girl sitting in a picturesque bedroom, writing in her notebook, reading a newspaper with a hot cup of coffee, or simply staring out the window on a rainy day with her cat sitting right next to her. There are tons of these channels, which are all very popular, and it captures, like I said, this sort of generational melancholy, anxious university student mood. There are now, hundreds of iterations of this, ranging from Will Smith to Boris Johnson putting their own spins on the popular genre. Yes, Boris Johnson has his own lo-fi beats to study and chill to get Brexit done. I think that's the full title. Check that out. Honestly, the mix is pretty good. Shout out Boris Johnson for that. Just to give you a sense of what lo-fi is as well, lo-fi means low fidelity, which is a term for music where you can hear imperfections that would typically be considered errors in the recording process. Often features, when it comes to lo-fi hip-hop, often features looped samples, simple chord progressions, and light synths with boom bap drum patterns. It became one of the most widely known microgenres and may also be viewed as chill-out music fused with hip-hop. Jay Dilla has been referred to as basically the godfather of lo-fi hip-hop, along with a few other big names. Its simplicity and ability to help listeners focus are basically its main selling points. And it's not really surprised that it's taken off in a time where there's prolonged use of social media that has resulted in a lot of mental health issues like anxiousness, anxiety, depression, and people just feeling generally overwhelmed, especially in a year like 2020. It's calming and relaxing to listen to. It can help you de-stress, clear your mind, forget your problems. That's sort of the appeal of it. Ultimately, it's background music, which is both its strength and its weakness. That's sort of a common criticism of it, is that it's unoriginal, cliched, and not designed to be actively engaged with, but that's sort of what's enjoyable about it, at least to me, is it's a place where you can relax, have a calm, standard heartbeat, and, pull away from the world for a little bit. Or at least have calming music in the background while you do something stressful, like write a 20-page paper that you're only just starting on. And some have theorized that the lo-fi chill hop popularity could be traced back to nostalgia for Cartoon Network's Adult Swim and Toonami. Now, Adult Swim specialized in these little short grooves that they would play as sort of outros in between commercials and shows. And it could be argued they engineered the success of rappers like MF Doom. Toonami also brought anime like Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo to Western audiences for the first time. And so you kind of hear that influence on music as well. Of course, with the visuals, with the anime visuals, that is obvious. So the teenagers and kids who love that stuff are now entering their late 20s, early 30s. So they're sort of looking to feel that energy, feel those textures yet again. And basically, that created a whole cross-section of people who love anime and low-key beats. And this is what this channel is meeting. That very specific Venn diagram. Even the brief disappearance of the YouTube channel Chilled Cow, who had the longest-running Beats to Relax study to on YouTube, sent the internet into a rage. YouTube mistakenly shut it down, and in the 2 years that the video had been live, it accumulated 13,000 hours in continuous stream time, and its overall viewership was 218 million. And in a time where we're all getting algorithmed to hell, it feels nice that we can receive music that you're not going to hear anywhere else, because all these playlists are curated by DJs, and that is increasingly rare in the modern era. So that's a really cool aspect of it too. And it's only grown more popular during the COVID era, as we're all stuck at home and feeling melancholy. This is exactly the vibe you want to capture. So I am saving lo-fi hip-hop beats to study, chill to. I hope you do too. Check them out. I mean, I'd be shocked if you have not heard it before, but if you haven't, enjoy the experience. Next one. Drugs make musicians better. I am skipping that statement. Definitely not saving that one. Now, this is a common refrain, common conversation. You hear that the reason so many musicians are drug addicts or died of overdoses or had drug issues in the past is because they're geniuses, and geniuses are tortured, and therefore they lean into the dark side and do drugs. Or you also hear the drugs themselves actually opened the minds of these artists and made them great, essentially arguing that the drugs are the reason that someone like a Jimi Hendrix became the legendary guitarist that he eventually turned into. And that is flawed in so many ways. Just to start things off, when it comes to music, drugs, specifically mind-altering drugs, we're not talking about Tylenol here, we're not talking about caffeine. Mind-altering drugs, alcohol, marijuana, LSD, heroin, others, they have had and continue to have huge effects on the music world and the musicians who inhabit the music world. From Charlie Parker, the great jazz drummer who inspired young musicians to emulate him in every way, including by picking up a heroin habit, to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll ethos that was glorified throughout the 20th century. And now you see it in hip-hop and every corner of music that has really proved to be pervasive. And it's provided the sense that the correlation here is the causation of creative genius from Miles Davis to Kurt Cobain. Here's the reality, though. Drugs will not make you a better musician. They just won't. If you're not good at music, if you suck at playing guitar, if you are a bad rapper, if you don't have any musical acumen, drugs aren't suddenly going to turn you into Superman on the guitar or on the microphone. They're just not. And even if you do have talent, let's say you are a great musician, you're a great musician because of hard work and talent, not because of drugs. That's not... Let's say drugs even come in at the back half. You've become a good musician. The drugs enter. Does that turn you into a better musician? No. Not really. They just provide you a new experience to sing about or write about or make music about, potentially, because music is about life experiences. That's all it's doing. What it's probably going to do is make you unproductive and potentially kill you and ruin your life. I mean, that's what it's going to do in the long run. Certain people might benefit from, the part of drugs where it allows them to lose their inhibitions, which can add maybe some improvisation to their music. But that's not going to make you a better musician. Now, it's true that there are conceptual links in your brain between things that you may not normally link after drug use, which could explain the creativity that drives music and the originality that musicians are always searching for. So, drugs could have that ability to make you have original thoughts, but like all drugs, it's easy to build up a resistance. In the meantime, you're going to lose your ability to experience other kinds of pleasure of the sort that artistic inspiration is totally built on. I mean, think about this rationally. The artists comes before the drugs. If drugs were the key to making good music, every drug addict would be a great musician, which they are obviously not. Like I said, it was hard work, it was talent, it was all these other factors that drugs did not play a role in. Now, the excitement of engaging with the dark side, including drugs, is something that's seductive to artists, and it's necessary to explore that area of the human experience and of the human psyche, but literally becoming hooked is not. That's just sad and tragic. Plenty of artists like Frank Zappa to Henry Rollins to Jason Isbell to Bruce Springsteen to Kendrick Lamar don't do drugs. Drugs aren't going to make you productive, that's your result. They might kill you. If they don't kill you, they're going to mess you up physiologically. Certainly in your mind, you're going to have serious long-term damage. Just your dopamine levels may never be the same. And not to mention all the other health issues that come with that. And I just think it's a really dangerous notion to entertain the idea that drugs are sort of this magic fairy dust that will turn you into a great musician. That's clearly not the case. Jimi Hendrix was a great guitarist because the dude lived and breathed the guitar. It wasn't like all of a sudden when he took acid he became Jimi Hendrix. No. That era was certainly filled with a drug culture, but the drugs did not make Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix defined the era for people who were on drugs. And that is just a small example of a ton of other musicians who just as talented as Jimi Hendrix, who were that way because of all these other factors. And that the drugs may have played a role in their lives, but to equate that correlation as causation for their greatness is a fallacy and ultimately dangerous. So I am skipping that. That is it for the skip or save segment of the show. After the break, we are getting into Classic Album of the Week.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the show. It's been a long road, y'all. Here we are finally at the end. Classic Album of the Week. It's the 50th anniversary of Paranoid from the Godfathers of Metal, Black Sabbath. It was the second studio album by the English rock band, released in September 1970. It was the band's only album to top the UK albums chart into the release of 13 in 2013. It contains several of the band's signature songs, including Iron Man, War Pigs, and the title track Paranoid, which was the band's only top 20 hit, reaching number 4 on the UK charts. It is often cited as an influential album in the early development of the heavy metal genre. It's only 8 songs, but its legacy stretches much further. In a retrospective review, AllMusic's Steve Huey cited Paranoid as one of the greatest and most influential heavy metal albums of all time, which defined the sound and style of heavy metal more than any other record in rock history. In 2003, the album was ranked number 130 on Rolling Stone magazine's list of the top 500 greatest albums of all time, and 131 in 2012. And in 2017, Rolling Stone called it the greatest metal album of all time. The band consisted of Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, Tony Iommi on guitar and flute, Geezer Butler on bass, and Bill Ward on drums. Now, in 1970, Black Sabbath, they released their self-titled debut, which performed way beyond expectations, sold super well, and charted not only in the UK, but in the Mecca of the music world, the United States. Their label, Vertigo, wanted to capitalize on their growing popularity, so they sent them right back to the studio to record a follow-up. And they wanted them to, stretch out their songs that were hovering around 8 minutes and touching on everything from war to heroin to the glory of the guitar. They needed one more tune for the album, and so in this famous story, they head to the bar while Tony Iommi, he stayed behind. He spent a few minutes writing a simple riff. And as Pitchfork called it, it chugged, it paused, and it kept prowling like a predator always in search of its next meal. They recorded the song in a flash and called it Paranoid, the fulfillment of a legal obligation. So there, it's like you're facing deadline in any job. They got to come up with a song, and they come up with not only a song, but one of rock's most iconic tracks of all time. Pretty good. Shows what happens when, sometimes you face a deadline, you might come out with something brilliant. 6 months after releasing their first album, they issued Paranoid as the second single, and the label turned the album title from War Pigs to Paranoid based on how popular Paranoid was on the radio. Record labels realized that heavy music could sell and that Led Zeppelin's favorite band might have a real future. And with this album, they launched heavy metal not only as a genre, but as an entire industry. And just to give you a sense of where the band was coming from, they all hailed from Birmingham, United Kingdom. Now, Birmingham has always been a tough place. And in the time when the band was growing up, it might have been the toughest era that it faced since the Great Depression. During World War II, the Nazis had really bombed the hell out of the city. There were 77 Nazi airstrikes that killed more than 2,000 people, stripped the city of its economic engines, and made existence really difficult for everybody. It was a industrial center, so when those factories got blown to smithereens, that really set back Birmingham decades. In the 60s, it also suffered anti-immigrant racism, storefronts that were just desolate, and cramped living conditions. Vocalist Ozzy Osbourne grew up with undiagnosed dyslexia and ADHD in a row house with no toilet. He wandered through ruins of bombed-out homes. He dropped out of school at 15. When he was a teenager, Ozzy worked in a slaughterhouse and went to prison for burglary. Guitarist Tony Iommi also dropped out at 15. He cut off the tips of 2 fingers on his last day of a welding job, which forever altered the way he played, causing him to use prosthetics. Butler grew up in a strict Catholic household and didn't realize that people had hot water in other neighborhoods. Drummer Bill Ward learned his craft at a young age because the guy who set up the kit at his parents' house parties was often too drunk to break it down at the end of the night. As Ozzy said, in those days, the working person's mentality went like this. You got what little education you could, you found an apprenticeship, they gave you a crap job, and then you took pride in it even though it was a crap job. And then you did that same crap job for the rest of your life. Your crap job was everything. So, these guys are coming from a really, really bleak area of England. It's still struggling from the effects of World War II and the bombing campaign that England suffered. There's no jobs. There's not a lot of future prospects for any of them. They all grow up dirt poor, super blue collar, working class poor. Just poverty that is really, really hard to imagine, even in England today. This is a post-war poverty that is quite bleak. And like Ozzy said, they didn't have much to look forward to in life. It's you go to school and then you get a job that you don't really like and you just do that and then that's it. That's your life. So quite depressing. And the city itself was pretty depressing. As Bill Ward said, it had constant steam and smoke. It was a very drab-looking landscape, and that sort of shaped their sound and their mentality. If you're not familiar with Birmingham, maybe you've watched Peaky Blinders on Netflix. That may give you a sense of Birmingham because that's where that show takes place. Very industrial, very blue-collar, very tough city, tough place to grow up in, and that is where Black Sabbath comes of age. So think of growing up in all that poverty, all that bleakness, and all that depression, really, and how that's going to inform your psychology and how that is going to translate into music. Now, as classic an album as this was, upon its release, the album was absolutely savaged by critics as obnoxious and just shallow. Lester Bangs called them unskilled laborers, which sounds pretty classist in retrospect. And it also started the rock music is evil satanic worship when a woman who committed suicide had their album on her shelf when her body was discovered, and that was a whole press row. And that is even, you still hear that with music today, and Black Sabbath was kind of one of the first bands to suffer that ridiculous press tabloid sort of narrative. Ultimately, though, this album is about depression in cities, in families, and in minds. Its original title, War Pigs, hints at the anti-war philosophy that drove the band. There are existential musings on the threat of nuclear annihilation and angry anthems directed at the old, fat, and wealthy for sending the young and poor working-class boys from Birmingham like themselves, into needless wars fought in the self-interest of the nobility. So it's angry and it's got a point of view, and that is what you need for a good metal, a good rock and roll album. As said in School Rock, it's about sticking it to the man. The opening track, War Pigs, was originally titled Walpurgis, the Night of a Witch's Meeting or Sabbath. That's basically Witch's Christmas. So that's a tone setter right there. Opens with one of the greatest guitar riffs in rock history. Iconic tempo change that sets the tone for this haymaker of chords and hi-hats. Song explores the Vietnam War. And Geezer Butler said that it's about how these rich politicians and rich people start all the wars for their benefit and get all the poor people to die for them. Politicians are the real Satanists. That's what I was trying to say. Though Ozzy Osbourne has said the group knew nothing about Vietnam. It's just an anti-war song. So you have some dueling narratives there. The second song, Paranoid, obviously the group's hit lead single. Its kinetic guitar, pounding drums, and the dark magic of Ozzy's voice either pulled you in or looked for its next victim. Planet Caravan, song number 3. It's quite the tonal change. It's a gentle psychedelic trance. You get a jazzy guitar, conga drums, lofty vocals. Sneaky good love song. Song number 4, Iron Man, puts you back in the metal machine. One of the genre's most iconic tracks, and now that's basically immortal once it was used with the Iron Man movie. Once you're in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you made it forever. Originally titled Iron Bloke, which is just spectacularly English. The song has perhaps the greatest riff in rock and roll history and provided the backbone for the entire song. A dark tale about a space traveler who sees Earth's bleak future but cannot stop it because he's turned to iron and loses the ability to speak. Electric Funeral, so you have that unforgettable whoa, 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 whoa riff. It paints a vivid picture of nuclear war. Such a dark song. So effective. Hand of Doom. Song that sounds exactly like the title. It explores the horrors of drug addiction and PTSD for Vietnam vets through masterful instrumental progression. Rat Salad. Explosive conversation between Tony Iommi's guitar and Bill Ward's drums, punctuated by Ward's spectacular drum solo that rivals any in metal history. And Only Fairies Wear Boots, the last song on the album. It's a tale about a street brawl that the band are victorious in. It uses a bit of derogatory terms for gays. It's, it's common for the time. It's the way they flex their macho cred, alpha male element that would come to overshadow the genre's, otherwise expansive qualities. But it's an immensely listenable song, even with that unneeded shot at the LGBT community. Overall, that's it. That's the 8 songs right there. And it would change metal forever. It would change rock music forever. My favorite songs on it would have to be War Pigs, Planet Caravan, and Electric Funeral. And it's a classic because it's a anti-war song. It's not, an anti-war album. An album that is so concerned with the bleakness of life and of experience, but still has hope and rebellion baked into it that motivates you to keep going and to change for a better world. And most of the time when an artist goes for that, it's going to be acoustic and it's going to be preachy and it's not going to have any energy to it and it's just not going to be great. This is the complete opposite of this. This is one of the most cathartic, thumping, just fills you with energy and emotion, which is the greatest thing about metal as a genre. Not only does it get you angry, but it gets you off your chair, gets you moving, gets you thinking, gets you being a human gets you to be the opposite of an Iron Man, pun intended. And ultimately, there's always going to be lonely kids who lack the self-confidence to, go out into the world and are suffering. And this album is one of those that will speak to them. And that is sort of the strange power and, unfortunately, relevance of Paranoid, is not only does it continue to speak to those kids who unfortunately still have to suffer through those experiences, but its anti-war messaging is still very much salient in our era with everything that's going on, and especially in a year like 2020. Anyways, 50 years on, Paranoid still manages to pack a punch. That is it for the show. Thank you for listening to the podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As always, please remember to subscribe to the show. Write a nice review. That really helps us and me out. Please follow us on all the social platforms. Thank you. Stay safe. Have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.